It's trying a new format for movie Face Off. I think I like this. I mean, obviously some sunny flare spots on the screen, but not too bad. I'll keep experimenting. So, this weekend, in addition to the release of Shazam, we got a new remake of the classic Stephen King novel, Pet Sematary. A remake because there was a 1989 film version that came out. And look, I love the novel. It's one of my favorite Stephen King books, and it's easily his darkest one. So, having two different film versions of the story, I'm going to have to put this in a movie face off. So, we've got 5 rounds of this. Let's do this. Round 1. Main character. Now, the main character for the purpose of this story will be Louis Creed, the father slash husband of the Creed family that moves to the new house by the pet cemetery in a rural town in Maine. Now, Louis Creed he's a doctor that gets a new job working at the medical center on a nearby Maine campus. And he's the kind of character who usually believes the more scientific reasoning and explanation for certain things, which makes his descent into grief and even madness later in the story that much more terrifying and honestly kind of scary in and of itself. Now, don't really know who played him in the 1989 film version, but I can honestly say he was good, just not my favorite character in that 89 film. For the 2019 remake, we've got Jason Clarke, an actor that I didn't know I've seen before until after I saw the film, but who actually did pretty well. Now, there are probably going to be some people that are going to prefer like the 89 portrayal of him, but I think in this one it works fairly well. Like, they do actually explicitly mention like his belief in the more scientific and grounded reasoning for things, which was only really suggested in the 89 film. Plus, a lot of the grief and emotion he has in this film, it can be seen right in his eyes and how he expresses them. And I think when it came to the actual descent, he did a really great job portraying that kind of grief and emotional state that he was in. So for this round, we give it to the 2019 version. Now let's move on to round 2, supporting cast. This will include the other members of the Creed family plus Judd. Why can't I remember his last name? Anyway, so for the most part, both supporting cast groups are pretty good. We've got, as the more recognizable name in the 89 version, we've got Denise Crosby as Rachel Creed, the wife and mother of the Creed family, as the most recognizable of that crew. In the 2019 version, we've got John Lithgow as Judd, the biggest name attached to this film. Now, for both of these films, most of the supporting characters are portrayed in similar ways, the biggest difference being with Judd in the 89 film being the much more charming and heartwarming character like he is in the novel. With 2019, he's a little bit more depressed in a way, but still got this charm and likability to him, which I really appreciate. Now, on a technical level, there are several aspects where the supporting cast for the 2019 film is better. But it's due to some of the weird and sometimes more unique acting choices in the 89 film that I'm just going to remember those characters more in a way. So, with that being said, this round goes to the 1989 film. Now let's move on to round 3, The Cat. I know that seems weird to dedicate an entire round to talking just about a cat, but this cat is the mascot of Pet Sematary. His face is on the goddamn cover. You're goddamn right I'm talking about the cat. The cat, full name Winston Churchill, Church for short. No idea why they called the cat that. So, Church the cat in the 89 film version, I have no idea what cat breeds are, or what cat breeds there are. In the 89 film version, we get to spend a little more time with the cat before he dies and comes back to life, as opposed to Church in the 2019 film version, where we spend most of the time after he gets resurrected. But we do get enough time with both cats to get an idea of what they were like before they died and came back through the pet cemetery. With the 1989 cat, he was a bit of a weird prankster kind of cat, sort of. And so when he came back as a resurrected cat, his personality just really seemed to slightly amplify that to a bit. I mean, he was a little bit more of like an asshole kind of cat. But honestly, with the way he was portrayed in the 89 film, he's just acting like a lot of other realistic, fully functioning cats. I mean, there was this one nice thing they did in the 89 film version where certain shots show his eyes were sort of like possessed in a way. It's really cool effect. You should check that out. But he doesn't really look like a cat that died and came back to life, or at least just died. I mean, he looks, and for the most part, really just acts the exact same way he did before he died, which really isn't that terrifying. Now, with the 2019 film version, we don't get spent as much time before the death, but we do get a sense that he's just more of a normal, typical cat, just walking around, likes being petted when he wants to be pet. But once he dies and comes back to life, he actually looks like he got hit by a car. His fur is messy, bloody, dirty. He looks the part. And when it came to his behavior, it was actually something that was more in line with the book, like how in the 89 film version, Judd's portrayal was more in line with in the book. But with Church in the 2019 film, after resurrection, he gets a lot more aggressive, scratching Ellie and Lewis. He gets into the crib with Gage, the toddler of the family, and he's creeping the toddler out. Gage is crying, and the dad had to rush in to quickly grab Gage out of the crib, with Church hissing, kind of like, at least like trying to scratch him. And there's even one moment in the movie where he brings a bird onto like Lewis's and Rachel's bed, and it looks like he's starting to eat him, but the bird's still alive, trying to flap its wings, and Church is just like keeps gnawing at it, but doesn't kill it. He's acting more sadistic, more cruel, and that's how I would expect something of a resurrected cat to act like, at least with some cats, because unlike how it's portrayed in both films, in the book, not everything that's resurrected comes back as more violent. But for the purposes of the 2019 film, the portrayal of him after resurrection is a lot more substantial. I mean, you can even argue that he lured Ellie onto the road to get hit by a semi-truck. Oh, by the way, spoilers, in case you didn't see the title of the video. So, I'm giving this round to the 2019 film. Now let's go into the fourth round, cinematography. There's a lot of beautiful shots in both of these films. I mean, especially the 2019 film version. I mean, you got some great shots of the graveyard, some really gothic looking ones actually, and a lot of stuff is really shot really well. Even in darkness, you see a lot of what's happening. But the way it's shot in the A9 film version, it's also pretty beautiful. And while it may not be quite as gothic as the 2019 film version, in some ways it does stir up a little bit more dread from a certain perspective, if you get what I'm trying to say. Like, with the way things are shot, it's just got a slightly more of like a nihilistic feel to it, which is something that's very true to the heart and message of Pet Sematary. So this is a pretty close round, but I think I'm going to give this to the A9 film version. Now let's get to the fifth and final round, how they adapted the story. Now, unless you didn't hear me clarify this in the title and just a little bit ago, spoilers, major spoilers. So, for the most part, the stories in both films are pretty much the same as they are in the book. Creed family moves from a big city to a small house in the more rural countryside of a small Maine town near a pet cemetery. Neighbor Judge shows Lois, Lois Creed, the pet cemetery behind the pet cemetery, about how burying pets here can bring them back to life. Shortly afterwards, one of the children of the Creed family dies. He's resurrected to the pet cemetery, and more death happens that gives meaning to the term, sometimes dead is better. Now, the biggest changes, the changes we have to talk about, come in the third act of at least the 2019 film version. In the story and in the '89 film, it's Gage Creed who dies, a toddler, just being a toddler, never doing anything wrong in his life, just taken like that. In the 2019 film version, it's Ellie that dies. Now, the switching out of the children isn't what really bothers people, I'd say. Because it's obviously still a very young kid being taken away from her family, from their family. And still staying true to the message of how death and grief can affect people and really destroy them and the after effects of such a sudden death. The reason why people are a little bit critical of this is like how the death is shown. With Gage Creed in the '89 film, you don't actually see the body after it happens. You see a shoe fly off, you focus on the shoe, and then it slowly cuts to the next scene, which I believe is actually the funeral scene for Gage. With the 2019 film, you do actually get to see the body, at least a little bit of it, and from a little bit you can see it, for some reason it looks spotless. No really visible blood that I could see. That's a weird decision, especially early in the film. We had actual really gory, bloody practical effects, so that is interesting. But of course, now we come to the actual resurrection of the two children. Now, in the '89 film version, Gage comes back, goes straight to Judd's house, kills him. Rachel ends up going to Judd's house. Gage kills Rachel there, calls Lewis on the phone, taunts him, asks him to come over and play. Goes over, kills Church, then kills Gage in a little bit of a battle. And then Lewis takes Rachel to the pet cemetery, buries her there, and then the '89 film ends with Rachel coming back, seemingly to embrace Lewis, only to grab a nearby knife and start stabbing him in the back. And that's where the film in the '89 version ends. And while it is a little bit different from the book, it's pretty much the same thing. After Ellie is resurrected, she goes straight to Lois's house, starts trying to wash her off, actually has sort of conversations with her, starting to realize that this looks and maybe even sounds like Ellie, but it's really not. But it doesn't really start to come to that realization until too late, because eventually Rachel is there, sees Ellie, and she rejects Ellie, realizing that this is not Ellie that came back. And so, fight in the house happens where Rachel dies, and during that time, Lois goes over to Judd's house, and he realizes that Ellie killed Judd in his house, realizing too late what he's done. Races back to his house, gets knocked out, when he comes up to and goes to the first Pet Cemetery, gets into a fight with Ellie, and just as he's about to kill her, he gets killed by resurrected Rachel. And then he gets resurrected, and then the three of them plus Church go back to their house after burning down Judd's house, and they collect a still living Gage to do who knows what, and the film ends. This is a very different ending. I mean, for the purists of Stephen King, that change alone is going to be enough to say, oh, this is a horrible version of the story. But here's the thing. This is also a remake of a previous adaptation. If you're not going to do something that's significantly different and try to do something new, then you're just making the exact same movie. So I applaud this movie for doing something new and different. And truth be told, this is still keeping in line with the message of the Pet Sematary novel. Death and grief are powerful forces that can influence and control people and destroy them. I mean, yes, the order of the people that die and who ultimately does die is very different. And while maybe some of the execution in the 2019 film version could definitely be improved, you gotta remember that while the 2019 film version is a dark story that does lead a little bit into the darkness in some aspects, but maybe not so much in others, the 89 film version, while it still has that dark atmosphere, leans a little bit more into the campy territory, which makes it charming in its own way, and it has earned the rank as, by many people, to be one of the best Stephen King adaptations, and I certainly believe that. But I mean, the 2019 film version seems to fully embrace the darkness a little bit more. So, as weird as this may seem, I do, in the ways that count, like the 2019 film version more than the 1989 film version. I know this is going to be a divisive opinion, but please leave your comments down below. And like, subscribe, share. And remember, I do really love this book. Read the book. It's awesome. And I'll see you guys next time.